Okay, so we are now going to do the actual data management, like the data management, right? And what we are going to do first is we are going to plot the variables to see how they look like, right? Now, if it's a categorical variable, we are going to be using the frec function, and you can't use this function unless you've installed the desk R library. And if your variable is a quantitative variable, then you're going to be using the hist function. Right, because mine is C2C, I'll be using frec all the time. Right, so this is my code. I'm going to create another code chunk. I'll call this one data management. And I'll create a code chunk. Or you can refer to the project assignment, the homework, project assignment homework, the project assignment document to, find the correct heading for this section. It's data management one something something. But that's not the focus of this video. So I'm going to create a code chunk. And so you head to the project document. This part says we're going to use the break function to identify the endings, right? So the thing is, some people will refuse to answer. Sometimes, there's a missing response and all those things. So you have to clean up the data to make sure that you're only using people who actually answered, right? So I'm going to use a frec function to plot the data to see how the responses look like. So I'm going to say here into brackets. Then this, I'll use the variable over here. So in my case, I called it my data, which is the subset that you created, the subset of the actual data set that you created, right? If you called yours my my vars or my library or my data set or however you called it, that's what we're going to be using throughout the code, unless you decide to display subsets and then you change this a little bit. So my case, mine is called my data. So I'll say my data, then dollar sign, and then it's already shown me. So government trust, and then I'll do the same thing for all three variables that I'm using. So this one will be gender, and then this one will be urban. No, sorry, urban plus rural. Okay. So you can put a line on each code. At the end of the code, press um, Control plus Enter or Command plus Enter if you are using Mac. So Command Enter, and then it runs that for me, and this is how it looks like. So the response. So when you look at the actual code book, it says that um, the response are supposed to be from 1 to 5. 1 is strongly disagree, and 5 is strongly agree. And I see only 1 to 5, right? So it means that there is no NA or there are no missing responses. So I don't have to do any further data cleanup. And that's one of the beautiful things about the geocode data sets. You don't have to do a lot of cleanup because data is almost clean. Then when I look at gender, there's female and male. Okay, so that's good. If I look at rural urban, it's also clean. So I don't have to go ahead and do any form of um, um, you know removing the endings. So this line of code won't be necessary because the endings have already been removed. So all I have to do is move straight to subsetting, right? And you do subsetting if you want to limit your your association to just a section of people. So, for instance, if you want to work with people who are, you know, between a certain age, or people from a particular country, or let's just say you want to work with people from only rural areas, right? Then in that case, you would do some form of subsetting. So, there's an example here. If I wanted to, use the responses of people from rural areas, what I'll do is I'll come to this part. Okay, so let me subsetting. However, find the correct heading in the previous assignment documents. create a code change. Then I'll put the code here. Now my data is already given. This line is called urban.rural. And then, but for my urban.rural, there are no names, right? Remember that when I ran this, it was giving me rural area and urban area. So if I want to subset only those in rural areas, I'll change this to rural area, like I see on the graph. So instead of two, I would say rural area. Right now, when I do this, it's going to subset only those who live in rural areas. Right? If I run this code, it's going to subset only people who live in rural areas, and you see that the number of respondents or the number of observations over here has reduced, which means that there were only 1,636 people in rural areas. But that's not my interest. That's not what I want to be doing, right? So I won't need that. Now, if you decide to do subsetting, right, then from henceforth, if you are using, instead of using my data, you will now be using rural subsets because you're working with only those who are in the rural area. So you won't ever use my data again. This is where the end of my data comes. Unless at some point you want to, test another association and the association is coming from the sub data set that you created. Otherwise, you'll be using raw data sets from then on. But that's not what I want to do. For me, I just want to see if there's an association between a person to another and whether they think they're doing what to stop the spread of the virus. And I'm not limiting it to a certain age. So if you limit it to a particular age, let's say if you want to test among young people, then you can say that my data, this will be replaced with the age variable. So I don't know what the age variable is in Joko, but whichever data set you're using, you change this part to that age variable. So you can say maybe age. Let's just say that in Joko is called age, right? So this age is maybe less than 50 and age is greater than maybe 20. So between 20 and 50, or you can add, the equal sign. Right? So there are lots more of the comparison operators over here, right? So if you want to do equal, use the double equal. If you want to be greater than or equal, the or symbol is this symbol. We call it the pipe symbol in programming. And then if you want to say and, use this one. So if you want to do something like that, you can go ahead and do it. But I'm not doing any form of subsetting. So this guy's so that's the data management section, right? So assuming that you had assuming that you had some NA, then you come to this part of the code that says my data var, this one. Assuming that you had so instead of rural area, urban area, and then you had maybe 99 or something, right? And you know that that's not a valid response, and you want to remove that, right? So you change this var one over here to the variable that you currently on. So if I'm on government trust, and then government trust has a response that's invalid. Let's say the response number was 99, right? Because you know that the government's trust is supposed to be from 1 to 5, and then now I'm seeing 99, and 99 is not correct. So I have to remove that. So I would say government trust, the last line government trust is equal to 99. I'm setting that to NA, right? And now it's going to set all the government trusts that are 99 to NA, meaning that when you draw the frequency distribution, it's not going to show the NAs again. So that's what you do. If you're doing for gender, you change the government trust over here to gender. If you're doing for urban dot rural, you change them to urban dot rural as well. And I also noticed that for one particular variable in the Joko data set, I can't remember, they actually typed NA, right? So one of the responses was, like the way you see one over here, the actual response was NA or N/A, right? It means that the NA hasn't been removed. It's still showing as a response. So what you can do is, if you're in that case, you change the variable name over here, the variable name here, and then put the NA in brackets. sorry, in quotation marks. So I think it was N slash A spelled this way. However it was spelled, right? Just put inside, quotation marks as a string because anything that's not a number is a string, and then do this, right? And then that will remove the N A for you. But I don't have that in my case as well. So that's data management one. Thank you.